Hi class, my name is Madisyn and to begin I wanted to introduce myself like how we did in the first day. So I am still a white, straight female, and to start off I wanted to talk about how I thought this class was like very different from any other class that I've ever had at the university so far. Like being able to be so open with like classmates that you barely know was like insane to me. Like now, like if you were in a biology class, you wouldn't turn to someone and be like, hey, what's your sexual orientation? Like, it's just so out there. Like, and I get that's the basis of the class, but it was just interesting because now I know people so much better than I ever thought I would. And now I have like great friends that are from this class, so I'm really appreciative of that. So to talk about my personal paper, I wrote a lot about women's rights when it comes to like gender being a big role in education and things like that. So personally, I wrote about how being like growing up in a very white community that's very religious and like not very open when you're talking about sexual orientation, whether that be gay or bi or anything like that. Like it just like wasn't heard of because everyone there's very particular, like older people a lot. Like it's like a retirement community, so I never experienced that. So especially like coming to Reno and seeing how open the campus is and how nice everyone is to each other, it was like so different. But like it's nice too because you get to meet so many different people with different backgrounds and things like that, and like minority groups, because like I said, my community was very white, like very white. So it was interesting like seeing everybody and learning about all these different cultures that Jody told us about, and like having all the guest speakers and everybody. Like is very interesting. I liked it very much. My historical paper was basically the same sort of thing where I talked about gender mostly because I faced a lot of hardships with my education because I was female. At least I thought so, because I noticed that in a lot of my upper division classes when I was graduating high school, it was mainly all guys. I was probably one of the two girls in my AP stats class and stuff like that. Like it was just unheard of kind of for girls to keep going and doing the AP kind of classes, and so I felt like I couldn't really talk in that class, and that's kind of how I felt when I first joined the class for GRI, because I didn't know anything about like any of that. I didn't experience any of it growing up, so like having to talk about like sexual orientation and race and minorities, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So it was very different. But back to the classroom setting, like I was like being able to kind of push myself and make myself speak up was important to me. So I mainly in my historical paper I talked about like women's rights movements and like Susan B. Anthony and how they led like the charge to have women have a voice, and because that is important to me like growing up, because being in that setting, like you were told like, okay, you just stay there, like you stay in your spot and you don't talk and you don't go further than you need to go because you did it already. Like you don't need to like surpass the guys or anything. I'm like, I want to be like past the guys. I want to be like better than anything I can imagine. So that's why it was important for me to talk about that. Another thing that I want to talk about was how that idea of women being kind of like suppressed kind of like triggered something when we had the speaker Meredith Oda, who talked about like the Asian culture, like how they came to this country and like right away people were discriminated against them and said like, no, they're not smart enough, no, they can't, they have to do like hard labor and like things like that. It just kind of like made me think like they didn't even give them a chance, and so it kind of just made me realize that like how lucky we truly are now to live in an age where like it's not like that anymore. I mean, there obviously is still discrimination and there's people with closed-minded ideas and things like that, but at least it's not so bad. I definitely didn't realize there was still like racist acts like this going on before I get onto the class, and like us talking about the news kind of like when we first get there to bring us back to class kind of thing. That was like eye-opening to me. So now I actually watch the news and I tell my parents and my friends about it, and it's like now they talk about it with me and it's so interesting. And so I'll definitely be keeping up on that because that was one of the biggest things from the class that I really learned from. The last thing I want to talk about was kind of like the idea of me having the white privilege, because I am of course Caucasian, and how that affects like people around me. So like the color line, being on that side of where you felt secure and safe kind of because you're in white space, especially like on campus, I feel like we're pretty open and diverse in a sense. And when my group did our group video and we were walking around campus, I definitely did notice that there are students that if they were white, they didn't understand this like subtle racist acts that are happening on our campus and stuff, like with the Nazi signs in the graffiti hall or whatever, and just like the things with the cops when we talked about that were on campus, and they were talking to the students and they said, oh, I almost shot you, and things like that. Like, they had no idea, and because we talked to them after, and so it was interesting because then we had students from minorities and they knew that happened, and so like the sense of not having to worry about that, like, I am grateful for, but now I know better, and now I feel like I can speak up and like take action against it and actually make a difference because of this class. Because honestly, this is probably the best class I've had at the university so far, and like I'm probably gonna stay here for a while, but I mean, I have a few more years, so, but I don't think anyone can top this one, because like I feel like I can talk to anybody about this now, and I can educate them and tell them like what's happening. So I do really appreciate it, because I didn't even want to take this class at first, because I was gonna take the the history class on like genocide and things like that for my diversity credit for my major, but that class was full. But maybe it was a sign, because I was supposed to take this class, and now I know like I can speak up, I can say my opinion, and that's okay, and people will accept it or just not listen, and that happens. But you have to keep speaking up, or else no one's gonna hear you, because that's the most important part about this class, I feel like. All right, bye class.